All right, folks, welcome to another edition of Ranking the Albums. And today I've got none other than Mr. Thom Jennings here. Welcome.
Hey, Joey, great to be here, as always.
And as you can see, he's in his nice brand new music room there, all set up for himself there. It looks awesome. I love that art wall there.
Thanks. Well, I like to think people tell me I sound like a broken record, so there you go.
So why don't you tell everybody who we're going to do today?
Well, we've been kicking around some stuff and some ideas. We figured we'd do a quick one because a lot of these tend to be kind of long, and we figured we'd let our viewers have a little bit of a break and pick a little bit of a quicker catalog. And I don't know, I'll just show you their debut album, and people can guess who we're doing today.
Hey. All right.
Now, we promise not to do Bad Company till the day we die, but yes, Bad Company. This is, of course, their debut album, one of my favorites, and of course, Bad Company had a couple of incarnations. I think they wanted having. We've discussed this before off air about how many lead singers that they had. I think that the two most notable, of course, were Paul Rodgers and Brian Howe, and
Yep.
they want to have at least one, if not two, other ones. Whose names escape me. And but those were kind of the two important eras. I think Brian Howe was like the Sammy Hagar of Van Halen. Sammy Hagar of Bad Company, because there were people that really loved the Brian Howe era. And I fall in that category. I mean, Holy Water is one of my favorite records of all time. I really enjoy that record. It's a lot of strong material on that. But when I think Bad Company, I think Paul Rodgers. And so we're going to be looking at the Paul Rodgers catalog, and that is 6 studio albums. We're going to rank them from numero 6 to numero uno. So that's our setup.
And then just to fill everybody in, the actual they only had three vocalists that actually recorded with them. And the final one, up until the return of Paul Rodgers, was Robert Hart, who sang on the Company of Strangers and the Stories Told and Untold album, where you can get a good indication of what he sounds like, because the Stories Told and Untold is basically kind of like going through the catalog of the band, and he tells the stories, and it's a pretty cool thing. But when you think of Bad Company, more times than not, people are going to link in Paul Rodgers as the man, and he definitely is.
Yep. Yeah, no doubt.
All right, let's fire away. Give us your worst Bad Company album, although you might like it.
I think Bad Company again. Very very small sample size from the Paul Rodgers era, but you got to start somewhere. This is an album. I'll be honest with you, I'm not real fond of it. Tried to, I remember when it came out. I think I got it in the bargain bin, and at that point, I'd heard all of the other Bad Company records, and this one just, I don't know. It's not horrible, but I just feel like it kind of fell flat. And that is Rough Diamonds. That's the 82 release. I think the only thing that the band is still performing these days is Electric Land, which I like that song. I think I like it as much for the vocal work as I do the guitar work.
Yeah.
But I think you could sort of tell that by the time Rough Diamonds came out, that the band had sort of run its course, and for all intents and purposes, they were a super group. I mean, everybody came from other bands. Paul and I believe Simon came from Free, and Mick was from Mott the Hoople, and Boz Burrell. I mean, he played with King Crimson of all
Yep.
people. And I don't know, sometimes you just jam these personalities into a room, and they gel for a little while musically, but that tension tends to set in, and things just fall apart. And I think that you could tell by they said by the time Rough Diamonds came out, they just lacked that oomph. I'm curious, Joey, do you remember what year did Zeppelin break up?
No, I think it was officially announced in '80 when Bonham died. They came out
Yeah.
a couple months later and officially said the band would not be able to continue as it was.
Yeah, so this would have been their first post Led Zeppelin breakup too. I mean, and Swan Song. I mean, it was an important label for both artists. So
Yeah.
maybe it was just kind of a post Zeppelin hangover too. But I don't know. It's just the album just doesn't do it for me like the other ones do.
Yeah, and that's exactly the one I chose for my number six choice as well. It only reached number 26 on the charts. If you look through the history, any Paul Rodgers album at least made number 15 or cracked the top 10. I mean, so, it was definitely a letdown. I think the band knew it. Like you said, it's the only Rodgers Bad Company album not to go at least gold. Electric Land only reached number 74 on the charts. Just not an overall pleasing album, probably even to their standards, which is why they only play Electric Land in live. I don't even remember. They probably haven't touched another song off this album, since that last tour that they did for the album, probably, and rightly so. They got such a great catalog where they could have easily have filled the slot in with other songs that were, much more enjoyable. So, well, yeah, we'll leave Rough Diamonds where it's at, and there's not another one like it. So, it really was rough, like you said.
Yeah, I wonder if they even toured it. To be honest with you, like, I mean, it could have been a lot of times. Like I think of like Triumph with Surveillance, and they just never really toured. I think they did a couple of shows, but I don't know. I mean, I don't know off the top of my head if maybe Rough Diamonds was. A lot of times these bands just put out a final album because of a contractual obligation, and they didn't necessarily think highly of it. But like you said, it is what it is. So with that, we are on to numero 5. And in this case, The Sky is Burning, Burning Sky, number 5. And I think this was another one that kind of fell flat for me. I mean, I like the title cut. I think overall the songs are pretty good, but I don't really feel like there's a lot of standout songs on it. And one of the interesting ways I feel like you can gauge a classic rock catalog is if the band is still active and performing. Because if the band is still active and performing, they're going to pull the best numbers from their catalog. And they don't really play anything from this record. I don't even know. I don't remember hearing anything from Burning Sky live the last few times that I saw Bad Company.
Yeah, no, you're right about that. All right, well, beg a little different on this one here. I actually am ranking Desolation Angels as my number 5. You look at it, it reached number 3. It's a double platinum album. Top 40 hit in rock and roll fantasy, one of their best. But for some reason, it just didn't really hit home for me. I mean, this was the one album I never had out of all of them
Hmm.
until, it was the last one I ended up buying from out of the Rogers catalog. I ended up getting it, like maybe about 5 years ago, and I played it. I think I would say this. It grows on me over some of the time. Every time I listen to it, I think I like it more. All right, but still, just not enough compared to some of the other ones. That's all. So it may, maybe another 50 years if I live that long, maybe it'll be better. Who knows? But as of right now, it's staying in at number 5 for me, and well, that's how we're gonna have to leave it.
All right. Yeah, I was just looking at, I got the copy here in I was just looking at some of the songs on the back there just to, I don't know. I'll get to my ranking of Desolation Angels in a bit. But we are up to number 4.
Yep.
And as promised, it's going pretty fast. And this is, I think, a great album. And I think everything from 4 on up are really classics. And it's a running with the pack or run with the pack. And I love the cover. I mean, the vinyl record cover is nice. It had that silver cover. It was a gatefold. And first song on side 2 is Silver, Blue, and Gold. And let me tell you, man, that song, I don't know. I never tire of hearing that song. I think it's probably Paul Rodgers' best vocal performance on any song ever. And granted, it's a ballad. It's not one of the rockers that he's known for. Like All Right Now when he was with Free or any of that stuff. But man, the first time I heard that song, it just moved me. I don't know. It's just a beautifully written song, beautifully performed song. The way it ebbs and it flows, it's just wonderful. There's some other great cuts on there. They did the version of Lieber and Stoller's Youngblood. That's just a lot of fun. I think that still gets some airplay every now and then. Of course, the title pack, Run with the Pack. I mean, that's still a live staple for the band, and Live for the Music, which is a good old fashioned Bad Company rocker, man. It's a great song. So that's my number 4.
All right. Well, I'm going with the one you just selected beforehand. Burning Sky is my number 4. The you know it only reached number 15. This one came out following 1977. There went gold. So that's basically where they kind of started to lose it a little bit. The other previous 4 albums had gone or 3 albums up to that point, I guess, had gone platinum or higher. That one was where they had a little lull and it only went gold. Uh, this is also one of their only other. There's only 2 albums where they did not have a top 40 hit on, and this is the other one. Burning Sky was released as a single, but only reached up to number 78. But the one thing I like about this album is there are some really good cuts on here. They might not be so memorable, because man, the radio doesn't really even play much off of here except for the title cut. But listen to a couple I'll recommend. Our Morning Sun, phenomenal song. Um, Passing Time, another great Paul Rodgers tune. Couple, couple other ones like Water, Everything I Need. Everything I Need was actually one written by all the members of the band, so that's pretty cool. You didn't see too much of that. Just a couple more. That's one of those albums where I say definitely for you people at home who might not have it or might not play it much, sit down one of these nights and give it a good listen. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised at how much more you might like off of it.
All right, so we are up to number 3.
All right.
I'm actually going to pull out Desolation Angels as number 3, and if nothing else, on the strength of Rock and Roll Fantasy, which such a great song. I mean, I when I was a kid, the very first 45 RPM record I bought was indeed Rock and Roll Fantasy. And I remember buying it, the picture sleeve and everything like that. The first time I heard the song on the radio, late 1970s, I don't know. To me, it just kind of captured the emotion of a live rock concert, And the album itself, I mean, there's some other great cuts on it. Crazy Circles. You got Oh Atlanta. Little Feat did a version of Oh Atlanta, different song, but with the same title. I love the version that the song Oh Atlanta by Bad Company. Lonely for Your Love. I mean, I guess I could see where you could say there'd be some weak points on here, but I'd say in terms of singles, just those 3 songs alone, the Oh Atlanta, Crazy Circles, and Rock and Roll Fantasy, those are classic cuts. And of course, Rock and Roll Fantasy has been a staple in their live set for a long time, and really just a classic Paul Rodgers rocker, man. Just very well suited for his voice. Just kind of a good old fashioned fist bumping song. So that's my number 3, Desolation Angels.
Curious as what's your take on Gone, Gone, Gone? Because that song was actually released as a single and it did reach up to number 56. You didn't mention it though.
I should have, because that's definitely one of my favorite songs. It's a Boz Burrell song. I mean, I'm going from memory, but I'm pretty sure if you check the liner notes, it's a Boz song. And it's funny to me. That's like where you have certain songs that you listen to because of a particular time in life or something that you're going through. And around the time that I was listening to Desolation Angels, I was going through a major breakup. So that particular song was kind of a song that helped me get through the breakup, and I think it's, I don't know, there's another song, I forget who sings it. Remember that song, You Ain't Worth the Salt in My Tears? So I think sometimes you have songs in that speak to you, and breakup songs kind of fall into one or 2 categories. One is like, oh, she's left me, and my life will never be the same. And but just the twist of, I don't know if I'll cry, and I don't know if I'll die laughing. And it's to me, it's just such a cleverly written song, and definitely a great rocker. And I'm glad you mentioned that song because it was one that certainly is a highlight on the album. And I think it's a song that they do, and I don't think Boz did a lot of writing for the record for Bad Company, but certainly that was a very important contribution to the Bad Company catalog.
All right. Well, now that we're done with your number three, let's go to mine. And this one might surprise some people, but I'm going with Straight Shooter, the album that reached number three and is triple platinum. Oh, wow. You got that mad you had to turn off your video for a second? Wow. Oh, man.
No, you remember Joey, how you asked me if I was fully charged?
Uh,
Now I got to plug in. So this is where we get to the boring part of our video because my cable only goes a certain length. So you're gonna get a brand new view because I got to plug in so we don't lose the rest of the show. This is high production here, folks.
we do whatever it takes to get the job
We do whatever it takes just to get through the darn show. So here we
Good,
are.
good thing
Now you get the full blown look at my face. So no, it had nothing to do with your choice. Which for the life I can't remember what was your choice.
Straight Shooter,
And that's 3.
and that's number three. So,
Okay.
all right. So with Straight Shooter, triple platinum, um, the second highest Bad Company album sales wise. Uh, Good Lovin' Gone Bad, top 40 hit. Feel Like Making Love, top 10 hit. But other than that, that album really, it's got some, good songs on it, but nothing that really got it a lot of airplay, really, unfortunately. I mean, that's the problem with that. Well, obviously, Shooting Star, which, for whatever reason, it
Yeah.
never cracked this. I don't know if they released. I don't think they released it as a single. Surprisingly, I think that's why it didn't chart. Obviously.
Hmm.
But yeah, obviously, Shooting Star, that's that's the big song on the album, really. If you think about it, if they released that as a single, it probably goes all the way to the top five easily. But for whatever
Yeah, because
reason,
that's a huge. I mean, that was a huge hit a huge concert staple. I mean, that's
oh, and
like
still
everybody
is.
sings that one. That's like the big sing along. It's where
Yep.
everybody's holding up their lighters and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there's some other good songs on the album, but even the radio never really touched too much off of it. From this, from this day and age, they stick to the same three. Oddly enough, I'm surprised. Good Lovin' Gone Bad. I don't know what Paul has against the song, but he rarely ever plays it live. Not sure why not. That's one of those great songs that I feel would be awesome to hear live. But I've seen Bad Company, I think, with Rodgers, I think 4 times now and never seen them play it. Looked at some of the tours. It's one of those songs they probably haven't played since the '70s live for whatever reason. But you know,
Hmm.
it is what it is. But yep. So number three is Straight Shooter, a dang good album. Just it only cracked number three for me.
Yeah, that's my number 2, and honestly, I was kind of conflicted as to whether it was going to be my number 1. But Good Love and Gone Bad. I mean, if I had to guess why he doesn't sing it, it's probably because it's a little bit out of his vocal range. I mean, that's man. You listen. I mean, you listen to that beginning line. It almost doesn't even sound like Paul Rodgers because he's singing in that upper register, and I think it would probably just shred his voice. And I think there's other songs that kind of fall in a similar vein that they don't necessarily have to play that one. But I don't know, man. Shooting Star. I mean, it's such a great song, and kind of another one that as a kid, you sort of relate to it. Um, Johnny was a schoolboy, heard his first Beatles song. I mean, that just kind of captures so many from that generation that decided to pursue a career in live music because they heard the Beatles and just kind of the nature of the music industry, how people are, really just shooting stars and they kind of come and go very quickly. I think the other one on there that you didn't mention was "Deal with Preacher." I mean, I love that song. First song on side 2, and "Wildfire Woman." I don't know. I really dig this album. I don't think there's a weak cut on it. Obviously, it sounds like we're kind of trending towards the same number one, uh, but I definitely give Straight Shooter a strong number two in my books.
All right. Well, my number two is oddly enough Run with the Pack. 76 came out, reached number 5, went platinum. So that marked their third consecutive platinum album in a row. And I know you mentioned some of these songs on the on your when you brought up the album.
Mhm.
And we'll start off with the gem, obviously, Silver, Blue, and Gold. That's the first song, one of the first Bad Company songs I ever actually heard, on up to my point, because I started listening to classic rock at a time, I think it was around 80, 81. So, that was one of those songs that you didn't hear on the radio a lot, but when it played it, man, you talk about a standout track.
Yeah,
It reminds me of the way the Who's getting in tune and the song is over. It's all in that kind of vein. Such great music that you don't hear that often, but when you hear it, boy, does it touches you. It reaches out to you. You definitely don't miss when they play a rare gem like that. And maybe that's a good thing that they don't overplay that song because they never play it live. They did like a few very rare times over the late 90s, I believe, when Paul first came back, but I've seen them 4 times. They haven't touched it. Man, what I would do to hear that one live, that would be one of the bucket list things you'd want to see for sure. Like you said, just a phenomenal song. Oddly enough, I remember they did 97 Rock, rock radio station here in town, actually did a double shot one time of that one and Youngblood on the same double shot on a
mhm.
two for Tuesday. And man, I mean, very different styles of songs, and they were just both kind of stuck with me though. Youngblood actually, and this is hard to believe because I didn't even realize this, it actually reached number 20 on the charts, which, for a top 20 hit, you never hear it on the radio nowadays ever, if at all. It really weird because it is a really good song, even though it is a cover. But Run with the Pack, that's one you hear a lot. As a matter of fact, if you remember the last time we saw them in our park, they actually opened with it, which was a surprise because
Yeah,
they were playing only a few shows that year, and they hadn't the couple shows that they had under their belt up until the time that we saw them. They did not play that one, and all of a sudden they opened with it, so it totally caught me off guard. I'm thinking, oh man, we're in for a treat, and we sure were. That
yeah,
probably was the best Bad Company show I've ever seen, I'd have to say. Unfortunately, the only downside was we didn't get to see Mick,
yeah.
like we did the time before at our park when they came in the early 2000, I think 11 or 12, somewhere around there. But yeah, definitely. This album really does a lot. Honey Child, you mentioned. Simple Man, another great song. Live for the Music, which kicks off the album, which I think you mentioned. Yeah, just a solid album from start to beginning, and definitely one for me that is second favorite Bad Company album.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. I mean, I think you brought up some good points. It's interesting. Youngblood, I always remember for whatever reason, Bruce Willis doing a cover of it because it was getting some airplay on MTV for a little while. And he was like, I don't know, I forget what, I think he recorded it under some pseudonym or something, or maybe it was part of a movie. But very straightforward song. I think it's probably a popular bar band cover. But also, like you mentioned with Silver, Blue, and Gold, I mean, people forget the album era, and it was such an important era for rock music. And I think that's part of the reason that rock music really kind of went in the downfall, uh, in a downward spin in the download era, because it was just it wasn't just the singles. I mean, like Stairway to Heaven by Led Zeppelin. I mean, that's not a hit single. That's an album track that was getting airplay on the radio, and you just don't hear songs like that anymore. There's so many records that have great songs on them that don't ever get any airplay anymore because there's not that kind of radio out there anymore. I mean, I listen to serious classic vinyl every now and then, and that's okay, but they tend to be pretty safe in their selections. It's more the deep tracks which you get some of those you know, album cuts that we were able to hear back in the day, and even Joe, living near Buffalo. I mean, think of all those great Canadian bands that we were exposed to because we got to catch the Toronto radio station, over the lake.
Yep.
All right. Well, obviously, number one, we're both in agreement, and it's strange because you think like in terms of debut albums. I mean, there's always conversations of who had the greatest debut album and things like that, and it's hard to think that some bands just never top their debut record. And even though Bad Company's never had a subsequent album that was as classic as their first album, that doesn't mean that their subsequent albums weren't as good per se. I mean, they weren't, but they still had great albums. But that first Bad Company album, I think you're going to agree with me. There ain't a bad note on it, man. Like we could go through every single track and almost everybody knows every track. I mean, Can't Get Enough, Rock Steady, Ready for Love, Don't Let Me Down, side one. I mean, you can't criticize any of those. Side two, the title cut, Bad Company, a classic. You got The Way I Choose, which is maybe the weakest cut on the album, but not a bad song. Moving On, I mean, classic. And then of course, ending out with Seagull, which is just this wonderful acoustic song. I mean, it's a special album. And I think sometimes bands just really capture a lot of magic on their first album. First album, I think of Van Halen, Boston. Those are the two that kind of pop right into my head.
The Cars.
The Cars' first album. All great stuff. Aerosmith's first album to a lesser degree.
Foreigner, we both agreed that was the top. I mean,
Foreigner, yeah. I mean, again, some of these records they come out of the gate and they're just so strong. And I think too, what's nice about it is if you have a strong first record, some people may think, oh, your first record's your best and you never live up to that again. But to me, it's more about laying a foundation of what the rest of your career is going to be like. And although you may never top that particular record in terms of quality and iconic songs, you will have established yourself and you can build upon that. And I think that's what Bad Company did. I mean, they were able to take that first record, build upon the success of it, and then do some subsequent stuff that was as good quality as well. So
yeah, obviously it was number one for me too. It went 5 times platinum. No other Bad Company album sold that many copies. Obviously, it's their bestseller. They had 2 top 20 songs on here. Can't Get Enough was at number 5 and Moving On at number 19. And like you said, I mean, you turn on the radio nowadays, listen to classic rock for, a couple hours, and you're going to catch at least one of these songs on this debut album somewhere. You always hear Can't Get Enough or Rock Steady, Ready for Love, Bad Company, Moving On, or Seagull on the radio somewhere. And I'm going to add also, if you ever get a chance to see these guys live, you definitely want to. Lately they've been adding Seagull, which is phenomenal. And they played it, I think they played it pretty much the last couple of times I've seen them. And it's just phenomenal. It was actually better when we saw him do it with Mick at our park, I think the last time that Ralph came, McRalph's. Man, phenomenal. Because that was a song that they both wrote. And they played it I believe it was the final encore, if I'm not mistaken, when they came
yeah,
back out.
yeah. Joe Bonamassa does a really nice version of that too. He added that to his set list, and Joe's a big Free and Paul Rodgers fan, so yeah, just a great song. It's interesting. I'm looking at this one. It's funny because I think I know there's at least a couple, but like don't let me down, or
Hmm.
I don't know, it's just such a great song. It's an album cut. It's not something that necessarily gets a lot of airplay, but in terms of album sides, I mean, side one of this record is just so freaking good. It's just, man, it just, I mean, Can't Get Enough, Rock Steady, Ready for Love, Don't Let Me Down. Wow. I mean, how do
Yeah.
you even flip the record over? You know,
Well,
just so incredible.
I was
And
just
there's great stuff on side too.
I was just looking over the set list from Art Park when they came in 2013. That was when Mick Ralphs was still with the band. And I'm looking, they played 14 songs. They did like a double encore because they came out, played a couple songs, and then they came back out with just C for Seagull with the acoustics, phenomenal. And I'm looking at the set list. They played 6 of the 8 cuts off this album during that show. So that goes to show you
Yeah.
how much they still love the album to be out doing that, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
So
and you almost got it because it's an album that so many people own. You know.
yeah, so since we're on the Bad Company subject, I think what would you say is your favorite Brian Howe era album?
Oh, Holy Water, hands down. I love that record. I absolutely love that record. I think it's great. Um, Not again another one that's I think Holy Water's probably, if it was ranked in this six, I mean, I'd probably put it right up there with Straight Shooter, and definitely in the top 3 or 4 of all time Bad Company albums. And
Yeah,
it's interesting because it really doesn't. The funny thing is that record doesn't really remind me of any of the Paul Rodgers stuff. I mean, it's so different. Like it's really just a different band. So I really love that record as a record and not necessarily as a Bad Company record. Kind of reminds me of like King Crimson. You know, King Crimson had the early stuff, you know, the John Wetton and Greg Lake stuff, and then all of a sudden they take a turnabout and do the the whole Adrian Belew era. So they were like in many ways very different bands. And in fact, the Adrian Belew King Crimson didn't even play the stuff with for the earlier stuff because they weren't originally supposed to be King Crimson, but they sort of gave it that name. I think Bad Company was sort of in that spot too. I think Mick was like, I mean, it's a name that sells, so they labeled it that. But I think Howe's stuff really stood up well on its own. And if I remember correctly, Howe kind of bailed on the band because he was doing all the writing, and it was pretty much the Brian Howe band. But since it was under the Bad Company name, he wasn't really making any of the money.
and Terry Thomas too, this producer.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yep. And
just a
Howe died very, not too long ago. He was pretty young, and that's a
yeah,
shame. And he did some great vocal work for Ted Nugent too. I don't know if you ever heard his
yep.
stuff with Ted, but yeah, what a great vocalist. And in fact, I think there was, if I remember correctly, and I haven't listened to it in a long time, but there was a live album where he split duty between, the Brian Howe era stuff and the Paul Rodgers stuff. And I thought he did a really good job singing the Paul Rodgers material, even though he probably didn't want to do it. But I thought he did it. I thought he definitely did it some justice. It's always weird how, like, you think about Van Halen, like Hagar had to sing the Roth stuff, but Roth never had to sing the Hagar stuff.
Hmm.
And like Howe had to sing the Rodgers stuff, but Rodgers never had to sing the Howe stuff, And it's interesting when you have lead singers change like that, I mean, Rainbow, another one, different lead singers and
Yeah.
different styles, but yeah, definitely a different band altogether with Brian Howe. But that Holy Water album, I mean, I don't know, I don't know what your favorite is, but I love that one.
What about favorite song by Howe?
Is that the one without Smoke Without a Fire?
Yeah. Oh, that's the album before it,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
it's on you know definitely on the Dangerous Age album.
yeah.
But that was like the first song that kind of broke him. Got him
Right.
started bringing him back. You know.
I don't know. Holy Water was just an album that I stumbled on. I mean, I used to buy records and cassettes and CDs and stuff in a bargain bin. I think Holy Water was one that at one point fell in that category. But it was just really good. I wasn't really interested. I mean, I remember hearing the house stuff on the radio, and it was like, oh, it's okay. But
Right.
that particular album was just one I played. I was like, holy crap! I really discovered this gem. I haven't spent a lot of time with the other stuff other than the live album. And the other guy that you mentioned, what was his name? The
Robert Hart.
Yeah, I mean, I would know a Robert Hart song if you had sang it to me. I mean, I'm not. I'm just you
Anyhow,
know.
interesting note on this, because you don't see it happening too often in the music world, but Sammy Hagar did it with Van Halen.
Mhm.
I can't really think of too many other examples, but Brian Howe is one of the few artists who brought a band that once had platinum status, and he brought them back to platinum status. So you got to give the guy credit. He did help,
Yeah.
get these guys back in the public eye. You know.
Yeah, and I said, it's kind of a sad thing because it's a shame that Howe wasn't able to have his own band and not have to play under the Bad Company name. But that's how it is. I mean, a lot of these guys, it's the name. The name is the important thing. It doesn't matter who's the members anymore. I mean, you look at so many bands today. There's so few original members, and there's some bands where there's no original members whatsoever, but they're still out there. I mean, you look at Yes, you look at Foreigner. They're really bands that have a legacy and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, the guys, the later lead singers are usually brought in to kind of prop up the old catalog and sing the old catalog. They're not brought in to revive the fortunes of the band. So in that case, Howe was definitely a guy that came in, kind of did his own thing, and made some inroads. And I think they benefited too from they were doing a bunch of opening gigs for people and kind of put Bad Company back on the map. So people
Yeah.
were listening to the old material again, and yeah, I mean, it's funny. I think in some ways Paul Rodgers owes a debt of gratitude to Brian Howe, because certainly Bad Company could have become much less popular if Howe hadn't exposed them to a new generation.
Yeah. Another thing too is a lot of things. Mick Jones from Foreigner was actually the one who introduced Howe to Mick Ralphs, and also if you remember the story, Atlantic Records was the ones insisting that they resume the Bad Company name. Originally they were just going to name it something else, but
Yeah.
unfortunately, the record company gets involved, and that's what you end up with. You know.
Well, you know what? That's what people buy, though. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, look at me. You give bands a different name, and it's a harder sell.
Yeah.
It really is. And I mean, it's even the touring stuff. I mean, it still blows my mind how many people just don't pay attention to who's in a band anymore.
A lot
And
of
I get
people.
it. I
Yeah.
like, like I'm a Yes fan. I like the current lineup of Yes, but you're kidding yourself if you think it's Yes that you grew up with. I mean, it's a different band. It's different people, except for maybe one or two guys. So you have to kind of go in there expecting that. But I said in the case of Bad Company, I mean, this was Brian Howe, the Brian Howe material. It didn't sound anything like Bad Company. I mean, it
Yeah.
wasn't even like it was. But I think in some ways, if you think about Rainbow, like the Joe Lynn Turner Rainbow versus the Ronnie James Dio Rainbow, that was a very different sound as well.
Mhm.
You know.
Yeah. Definitely. All right. Well, any other last comments you want to mention about Bad Company before we sign off for this one here?
No, no, it's that it's a fun catalog. I agree with you. I mean, if Bad Company gets back out on the road, you got to catch these guys before they go. Um, just good stuff, man. Just still a great rock and live band. They still play with a lot of heart. And Paul Rodgers is one of those guys whose vocals still sound great. I mean, ironically, I believe pretty much Bad Company now is like the what three quarters of it is the Paul Rodgers solo band with just Simon Kirk on drums playing Bad Company songs. But again, it kind of goes back to the name. You put the Paul Rodgers band in a venue, it only draws so many people. And right now, 3 out of the 4 members, including Paul, of course, were the Paul Rodgers solo band, and they go out as Bad Company and they're playing large arenas. So it's a fascinating thing what a name can do for a record and a band.
Yeah. Another thing too, I think what you got to look at too is that I think one of the reasons why Paul Rodgers is still sounding so phenomenal all these years down the road is, yeah, not only did he take care of himself, but he wasn't really out on the road a lot in the late '80s and early '90s too much, or up until about '99 when Bad Company got together. He did, I think, a tour with the Firm, but
Yeah.
other than that, he wasn't really out there, night after night killing his voice, and he's really done, like I said, I've only seen him 4 times, and then saw him in 2002 when they opened with Foreigner. They did a co-headline. And then I seen him at Art Park in 2013, and man, I could not believe how fantastic this guy sounds. Amazing. He seems to
Yeah.
just get better with age, really. So,
Yeah, pretty much the only thing Paul Rodgers can't do is sing Queen songs. So
well, who can?
that's that could be maybe a discussion for a whole other day. But
Yeah.
yeah, we could do a show on worst career decisions. We could talk about Paul Rodgers joining Queen, but it is what it is. So
Yeah. All right. Well,
all right, my friend. As always, I enjoy this. What are we thinking next? We're gonna just surprise people, or are we gonna pull something
yeah.
out of the air?
We'll pull something out of the air and surprise them, but let's just say the next band that we do probably will have a really big catalog, couple different vocalists, and we'll leave you with that thought.
All right, sounds like a plan.
All right. Till next time, signing off.